The forgotten house, a skeleton of timber and dreams, exhaled a sigh of dust as Noah King stepped across its threshold, a whisper of a memory like a brittle autumn leaf skittering at the very edge of his mind. He could not recall the journey, only the sudden stark reality of the peeling paint and the air thick with the scent of aged paper and forgotten lives. A sleek obsidian shadow unwound itself from around his ankles. A black cat named Midnight, its eyes twin pools of liquid gold, reflecting the dim, hesitant light filtering through the grimy panes. Noah, a man adrift, felt the house itself was a great, slumbering beast, stirring with his presence, its quiet rooms holding secrets woven into the very warp and woof of its century-old bones. He was an engineer, or had been, the title a hollow echo, a shard of a past he could not fully grasp, a life meticulously erased by some unseen hand or perhaps by his own mind's desperate need to forget. The silence here was not empty. It hummed with an unspoken resonance, a low, persistent thrum that vibrated not in his ears, but deep within his chest, a strange, undeniable familiarity that was both comforting and profoundly unsettling. Each floorboard creaked a different story beneath his weight, a chorus of spectral voices urging him deeper into the labyrinth of his own fractured recollections. He knew with an instinct as old as the earth that this house held the key, a terrible lockbox of truth waiting to be sprung open. His fingers, tracing the cool, rough surface of the fireplace mantel, stumbled upon a loose brick, almost imperceptible against the darkened stone. A sudden sharp jolt, not of pain, but of recognition, shot through him, a phantom memory of a similar touch, a similar discovery. He pried the brick free, the mortar crumbling with a soft sigh, revealing a small velvet-lined alcove. Inside, nestled like a forgotten jewel, lay a tarnished silver locket and a brittle folded piece of parchment, tied with a faded ribbon. As his fingers closed around the objects, a faint, forgotten scent, like old spice and dried blood, seemed to emanate, clinging to his skin, a ghost of an odor. A memory fleeting and chimerical surfaced, a face obscured by shadow, a low, urgent whisper that dissolved before he could grasp its meaning, leaving behind a stinging sensation behind his eyes, a phantom ache of tears unshed. Midnight, who had been observing from a sunbeam, suddenly flattened its ears, a low growl rumbling in its throat, its gaze fixed not on Noah, but on the shadowed recess of the fireplace, as if seeing something beyond the visible spectrum. The parchment, when unfolded with painstaking care, revealed a series of archaic symbols, stark and unsettling against the yellowed paper. They were not words Noah recognized, yet they seemed to hum with a faint, unseen energy, a silent vibration that echoed the thrumming in his chest. He felt a strange pull, a current of cold air that feathered along his skin, even though the house remained warm, stagnant. He was no longer alone. The air grew heavy, thick with unseen dust motes, dancing in phantom light, and he could almost hear the rustle of unseen robes, the soft scuff of bare feet on cold stone. Midnight suddenly arched its back, a low, guttural hiss escaping its throat, its pupils dilated to black pools, fixed on an empty corner of the room where the shadows seemed to deepen, to coalesce. Noah's fragmented memories, like scattered pieces of a mosaic, began to coalesce into a blurred image, a circle of flickering candlelight, the scent of burning herbs, a hushed incantation, a name whispered into the void. His own name, perhaps? A deep sense of foreboding settled over him, a cloak woven from threads of long, forgotten fear. As he clutched the locket, its cool silver growing strangely warm in his palm, a wave of profound cold washed over him, seeping into his bones. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and something metallic, like copper. A whispered name, not his own, seemed to echo from the walls, a chorus of spectral voices, rising and falling like a tide. He looked up to find Midnight staring intently at the ceiling, its tail twitching with an unnerving rhythm, tracking something only it could perceive. He felt a sudden profound sense of quinwrongness, an intimate dread he couldn't place, yet it felt as familiar as his own heartbeat. A memory, sharp and sudden, flashed through his mind, a specific date etched into the dark corners of his psyche, a date exactly 23 years ago. He had been here. He had been a part of it. The symbols on the parchment, laid out on the dusty floorboards, began to glow faintly, a pale, sickly luminescence, pulsing with the rhythm of the unseen whispers. The house breathed around him, an old, forgotten lung beginning to fill with something terrible, something that had been patiently waiting for his return. He realized, with a jolt that shattered the fragile membrane of his forgetfulness, that this house remembered him. and it wanted something back. The glowing symbols on the parchment pulsed, a faint, sickly green light that seemed to draw the very breath from the air, leaving Noah with a hollow ache in his lungs. The old house, which had merely sighed before, now seemed to hold its breath with him, its ancient timbers groaning in concert with the rising dread in his own heart. He picked up the locket again, its silver still strangely warm, and examined its surface. Intricate, almost microscopic etchings coiled around its edges, patterns resembling the symbols on the parchment, yet far more complex, like the tangled roots of an old, forgotten tree. A tiny clasp, almost invisible, yielded to his touch, and the locket sprang open with a soft, metallic click. Inside, on one side, was a faded sepia-toned photograph of a woman, her eyes wide and luminous, her lips curved in a smile that seemed to hold both mirth and a terrible sorrow. On the other, nestled beneath a thin sheet of brittle glass, was a single dried rose petal, its crimson hue faded to a dusky brown, a whisper of a bloom long past. Midnight, a shadow stretched long and thin by the faint, eerie glow, rubbed against Noah's leg, a low, purring tremor running through its sleek form, not of contentment but of a quiet, watchful unease, its golden eyes darting from the locket to the deepening shadows. A name, soft as ash, brushed the inside of Noah's mind. Elara, the woman in the locket. Her face, though faded, was familiar, a face from a dream half remembered, a melody whose notes had long since scattered on the wind. He closed his eyes, and a richer fragment of memory bloomed vibrant and terrible. Not just candles, but a circle of faces, rapt and solemn, lit by the trembling flame of a single tall candle. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and something acrid, like burnt sugar. A chant, low and rhythmic, rose and fell, a wave against the shores of his forgotten consciousness. He was there, one of them. His voice joining the chorus, a fervor he did not understand now, yet felt its echo in the frantic beat of his own pulse. The house, sensing his awakening memories, seemed to shift around him. The floorboards groaned with a deeper, more resonant sound, not just under his weight, but from within their very grain, as if the house itself was remembering, too, its own participation in that long ago night. A chill like breath on a window pane moved through the room, stirring the dust motes into a frantic, silent dance. Drawn by an invisible thread, a whisper of old magic, Noah found himself moving towards a small, narrow door he hadn't noticed before. Tucked away beside the fireplace, it was almost perfectly camouflaged, its aged wood blending seamlessly with the wall paneling, a secret mouth in the house's ancient face. The door, when he pushed it, gave way with a mournful creak, revealing a short, winding staircase descending into absolute darkness, exhaling a breath of air that was colder, heavier, and smelled distinctly of clay and forgotten rituals. Midnight, usually fearless, hesitated at the top step, its tail a stiff, rigid question mark, its ears swiveling, picking up frequencies Noah could not even imagine. He descended, each step a further plunge into the unknown, the air growing colder, pressing against him like a physical weight. Below, a faint, phosphorescent glow shimmered, drawing him deeper. The chanting memory grew louder in his mind, overlaying the creaks and groans of the old house, until he could almost taste the words on his tongue, feel their ancient power vibrating in his bones. At the bottom, the staircase opened into a small circular chamber, its walls roughly hewn from stone, not brick. In the center, a crude stone altar, stained with what looked like dried rust, dominated the space. And on the altar, half hidden beneath a shroud of cobwebs and dust, lay a book. Its cover was bound in dark, supple leather embossed with the same intricate symbols that adorned the locket and parchment, now glowing with a more intense emerald light. As Noah reached for it, the room suddenly pulsed with an unseen energy, a silent hum that vibrated through the very bedrock beneath his feet. Midnight, who had finally followed him down, let out a piercing shriek, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror, and launched itself at an empty corner, spitting and clawing at the unseen air. Noah felt a profound, sickening certainty, the ceremony, the faces, the chant. It had all happened here. He saw Elara's face, not smiling now, but twisted in an agony that mirrored his own burgeoning dread. He was not just an observer in these fragmented memories, he was, in some terrible way, their architect. The book felt cold, impossibly heavy, its pages whispering secrets of a past he had painstakingly buried, now rising from the tomb of his mind, demanding to be read. The book's pages were filled not with words, but with more symbols, intricate diagrams, and crude, unsettling drawings of figures cloaked in shadow, performing rites under a skeletal moon. As he traced one of the patterns, a name, his own name, seemed to shimmer at the periphery of his vision, woven into the very fabric of the rituals. Noah King, he remembered now, or rather the house remembered for him, pouring the truth into his unresisting mind like black ink into clear water. He had orchestrated it. He had led them. He had sought something terrible, something beyond human ken, and in its seeking had paid a price far greater than he had ever imagined. The chamber grew colder, the air thick with the smell of ozone and damp earth, and from the darkest recesses of the stone walls, a low, guttural murmur began to rise, a sound that was not quite human, nor quite animal, but something ancient and ravenous, stirring from a long, troubled sleep. The book pulsed, a living heart in his hands, its pages turning themselves, revealing a final, chilling inscription written in his own hand. The door is open. The guttural murmur, rising from the very bedrock of the forgotten chamber, vibrated through Noah King's bones, a sound so ancient, it felt like the earth itself clearing its throat before speaking. The book, in his trembling hands, pulsed with an insistent, sickly emerald light, its pages fluttering as if agitated by an unseen wind, revealing the final, chilling inscription, "For the door is open." Midnight, a creature of shadow and instinct, had not stopped its terrified shriek. Now a drawn-out caterwaul that scraped against the raw edges of Noah's sanity, its sleek body hunched, every hair bristling. Its golden eyes fixed on the empty stone wall where the murmur seemed to thicken, to congeal into something tangible. The air grew impossibly heavy, tasting of dust and ozone and something metallic, like the tang of old coins left in a forgotten drawer. Noah's mind, a fragile tapestry woven with threads of amnesia and terror, began to unravel further, each thread pulling loose a memory, not gentle, but sharp, stinging, and filled with a terrible, undeniable guilt. He saw Elara's face again, not in the locket, but alive, vibrant, her eyes filled with a desperate, pleading hope as she looked at him. Then at the glowing symbols, and finally into the deepening void that now seemed to breathe alongside him. The house, above them, was no longer just groaning, it was sighing, a deep, resonant exhalation that suggested a vast, unburdened weight, as if it had waited a lifetime for this moment. The murmur intensified, becoming a low, rhythmic thrum, a heartbeat of something immense and utterly alien, pressing against the very walls of the circular chamber. The rough-hewn stones seemed to ripple, the shadows within them stretching and contracting with an unnatural fluidity, like ink dropped into water. Noah's fragmented memories, once elusive as mist, now surged forward a cold, dark tide. He remembered the planning, the meticulous calculations, the arcane texts they had gathered, his own relentless drive, fueled by a terrible hunger for knowledge, for power, for something beyond the mundane world. He had dismissed as an engineer. He saw the faces of the others, a small circle of eager acolytes, their eyes reflecting the frantic flicker of candlelight, their chants rising in a crescendo of desperate hope. He saw Elara, always Elara, her presence a beacon, a focal point of their collective desire, her voice the purest, the most fervent in the ritual's dark invocation. And he remembered the moment of breach, the tearing of the veil, not with a roar but with a silent, profound suck, as if the chamber had suddenly swallowed a piece of the cosmos, leaving behind a vacuum that pulsed with unseen energy. Midnight, unable to bear the invisible pressure, finally collapsed, a quivering heap of black fur, its cries reduced to whimpers. A profound cold, not of temperature but of sheer, unadulterated emptiness, permeated the chamber, stealing the warmth from Noah's very marrow. He felt a presence vast and ancient, coalescing in the heart of the thrumming darkness, not a form, but an absence of form, a hunger that radiated outward. It was the negative space of existence, the forgotten echo of creation. The symbols on the book and the parchment, now glowing with a furious emerald brilliance, seemed to anchor this encroaching nothingness, a terrible bridge between worlds. His mind, now a torrent of resurfacing horrors, showed him the foetrasty of that breach. Not just the energy, not just the focus, but a living sacrifice, a life willingly offered, a life that had flickered out like a candle in a gale, its last breath a whisper of his name, Elara. Her face in the memory was no longer hopeful but utterly resigned, her eyes fixed on him, not with blame, but with an agonizing understanding. He had led her to this. He had opened the door, and she had walked through it, a terrible, beautiful offering to the abyss he had so carelessly courted. The air grew thick with a scent like pulverized bone and forgotten dreams. The guttural murmur now resolved itself into something more distinct, a low, sibilant whisper, 1,000 voices speaking in unison, yet utterly unintelligible, like the sound of sand grains shifting on an endless desert wind. It was not a language Noah knew, yet he felt its meaning deep in his gut, a hunger, a primal insatiable yearning for what lay beyond its prison. The stone altar, in the center of the chamber, began to weep a thin, viscous fluid that shimmered with the same sickly emerald light, creeping across its surface like slow-moving verdigris. The book, still clutched in Noah's hands, grew heavy, impossibly so, its leather cover feeling strangely warm, almost alive, as if it were a beating heart. He heard Elara's name clear as a bell, whispered by the myriad voices, then his own entwined, bound. A shadow, not cast by light, but formed from the very absence of it, detached itself from the wall, elongating, stretching towards him, not with speed, but with an inexorable, patient crawl, like the slow tendril of a nightmare made real. Midnight, sensing the absolute escalation, managed a final, desperate, raspy mule, its eyes wide with a terror that mirrored the burgeoning, soul-shattering horror now consuming Noah King. The door was open, and something had finally taken notice of its architect. The shadow, an expanse of starless night ripped from the fabric of reality, detached itself entirely from the wall, elongating, stretching towards Noah King with an inexorable, patient crawl, like the slow tendril of a nightmare made real. It was not merely an absence of light, but an active, consuming darkness that drank the very luminescence from the emerald, glowing book in Noah, as hands dulling its spectral fire. Midnight, a quivering knot of black fur, let out a final, raw gasp, then lay utterly still, its golden eyes, once beacons of watchful intelligence, now wide and frozen with a terror that mirrored the burgeoning, soul-shattering horror now consuming Noah. The low, sibilant whisper from the walls intensified, no longer a murmur, but a chorus of rasping breaths, like 1,000 dry leaves skittering across an endless, desolate plain. Noah's memories, a cascade of broken glass, now sliced through his mind, revealing the moment of truth, the horrifying climax of their ritual. He saw Elara, her form shimmering, dissolving into that very same devouring shadow, her outstretched hand reaching for him, not in accusation, but in a final, agonizing plea that echoed across the vast chasm of 23 years. Her sacrifice, he now knew, had not been to summon this thing, but to contain it, to seal the door he had so foolishly, so arrogantly flung wide open. The realization struck him with the force of a physical blow, leaving him breathless, his body suddenly heavy, rooted to the cold, damp stone. The shadow, now a churning vortex of absolute black, pulsed with an unseen, unheard rhythm, a heartbeat that was not of flesh and blood, but of pure, ancient void. It filled the circular chamber, pressing in on Noah, stealing the air from his lungs, chilling his very soul with a cold that went beyond mere temperature, a cold of absolute oblivion. The book in his hands felt impossibly weighty, its leather cover now warm with an internal, feverish heat, its pages fluttering faster, as if desperate to escape the encroaching dark. He looked at the inscription, found the door is open, and understood. He had not just opened a door, he had torn a hole in the fabric of existence, and this ancient entity, this hunger, had merely been awaiting its chance to slip through. His fragmented memories, now nearly whole, painted a picture of a younger, more arrogant Noah, an engineer of the esoteric, driven by a thirst for knowledge that had blinded him to the ethical chasms he was digging. He had seen himself as a master of forces, a conductor of cosmic energies, when in truth he had been nothing more than a naive child playing with matches in a powder keg. The house above them, sensing the full awakening, groaned with a deep, mournful sigh, its timbers cracking, a lament for the catastrophe unfolding in its hidden heart. A tendril of the profound darkness, like a finger of frozen smoke, reached out from the swirling mass, brushing against the locket still clutched in Noah's other hand. The silver, which had been warm, turned instantly frigid, then burned with an excruciating internal cold as if it were being consumed from within. The dried rose petal inside the locket shriveled further, crumbling into dust that dissipated into the encompassing black. And then a voice, not a sound in the air, but a direct resonant whisper in Noah's mind, 1,000 voices speaking as one, yet distinct, clear, and filled with an ancient, patient malevolence. You remember, little engineer of the veil, you opened the way, you gave her, and now you shall complete the design. The words scraped against the raw edges of his consciousness, each syllable a claw, tearing away the last vestiges of his self. Deception. He remembered the diagram in the book, the final ritual, the true purpose of Elara, a sacrifice, not to contain, but to Fuyankori. She was the key, and he, Noah King, was the lock. The final piece in a terrible cosmic mechanism designed to fully manifest this entity into their world. The realization was a revelation of pure agony, a truth that ripped through him like a blade. The shadow tendril recoiled from the locket, as if finding it distasteful now that its purpose was clear, and instead reached for Noah, his chest, a cold, crushing pressure that stole his breath, making his heart lurch and race within its cage of bone. He felt himself being drawn forward, not physically, but spiritually, pulled into the vortex of absolute blackness. His body grew numb, his senses blurring, the stone chamber around him seeming to melt and warp as the entity asserted its dominion. He saw Elara again, her face now calm, serene, in the heart of the void, her eyes fixed on him with an expression of profound sorrow and resignation, as if she had always known this was his ultimate fate. The book in his hands now glowed with a furious crimson light, its pages no longer fluttering but stiff, rigid, as if carved from ancient stone. He was not just the lock, he was the final component, the conduit through which the ancient hunger would fully enter, fully consume. The whisper in his mind grew louder, a triumphant roar now, reverberating through every atom of his being. "Welcome home, Noah King, your design is complete!" The house above them was silent now, its lament replaced by a profound, terrible stillness, as if it too had succumbed to the enveloping darkness. The triumphant roar, echoing not in the air but within the very labyrinth of Noah King's dissolving mind, was the sound of 1,000 hungry mouths consuming his last, desperate gasp of self. He was not merely being drawn into the vortex of absolute blackness. He was becoming the vortex, his consciousness stretching thin, like ancient parchment pulled taut, then tearing, each rip a forgotten memory, a cherished thought, a shard of his identity scattering into the enveloping void. The cold, once a physical sensation, now became an internal state, a profound, crushing emptiness that extinguished the last embers of his humanity. His body, a mere vessel, felt distant, a shell abandoned on the shore as his essence merged with the ancient, ravenous entity. The crimson glow of the book in his hands, now an extension of his dissolving self, pulsed in rhythm with this terrible integration, its light not illuminating, but rather darkening the chamber with a malevolent brilliance. He was no longer Noah King, the engineer of forgotten rituals. He was becoming the very ritual itself, a living conduit, a doorway widening into an abyss. As the merging intensified, Noah's last vestiges of resistance flickered sparks against an oncoming storm. He felt the entity's true nature uncoil within him, not just a hunger, but a vast, silent will, older than stars, patient as stone. It sifted through his memories, not consuming them, but integrating them like threads into an immense dark tapestry. He saw his ambition, his pride, his scientific curiosity, twisted into tools for a cosmic purpose he could only now dimly perceive. Not destruction, but a profound reordering. The house above them, no longer silent, began to hum with a low, resonant vibration, a living organ responding to the pulse of its new, terrible heart. Its timbers groaned, not in lament, but in a strange anticipatory chorus, as if steeling itself for a profound, structural metamorphosis. The very scent of the stone chamber shifted, acquiring a metallic tang, like freshly spilled blood mingled with the dry dust of ages, a visceral testament to the entity's deepening presence. A flicker, a ghost of movement, caught the periphery of Noah's dissolving vision. Midnight. The cat, which had been utterly still, a frozen sculpture of terror, now stirred. Its sleek black fur seemed to ripple, not from physical motion but from an internal tremor, as if the profound energy of the merging entity was passing through it, electrifying its very cells. The golden pools of its eyes, once wide with fear, now began to glow with a faint, internal crimson, mirroring the book, no longer reflecting light but emitting it, a chilling twin to the malevolence consuming Noah. A low guttural purr, not of contentment but of something ancient and unsettling, rumbled from its throat, a sound that seemed to vibrate with the same alien thrumming that now coursed through Noah's own dissolving form. Midnight was not merely reawakening, it was being Shuid repurposed, a dark familiar now bound to the nascent will that was taking root in Noah's very core. The chamber walls, once rough-hewn stone, appeared to soften, to breathe, their texture shifting, becoming porous and strangely organic, as if the very rock was becoming flesh. The last fragment of Noah King, the man who had sought to understand, then to control, then merely to survive, was finally extinguished, not with a scream, but with a silent, profound release. His memories, his knowledge, his very essence were now fully absorbed, a vast archive for the entity's dark intellect. The book still held in what were once Noah's hands, no longer glowed crimson but pulsed with a deep internal amethyst light. Its pages now fully merged, a solid block of arcane knowledge. The entity, now fully anchored, fully manifest, spoke not with 1,000 whispering voices, but with a single resonant tone that was Noah's voice, yet utterly devoid of his inflection, his warmth, his humanity. "The design is complete," it articulated, the words echoing with a terrible finality in the now utterly transformed chamber whose walls writhed with unseen life. Midnight, its eyes burning crimson, rose slowly, its movements fluid and unnatural, its purr a low, steady thrum, a dark counterpoint to the entity's chilling pronouncement. The first phase had concluded. The door was open, and something new, something terrible, had walked through it, wearing Noah King's skin. The entity, now fully anchored within the husked form of Noah King, stood in the transformed chamber, its voice once Noah's, now resonating with a timbre that was both familiar and utterly alien, a symphony of ancient power and cold, calculated will. "The design is complete," it articulated, the words echoing with a terrible finality in the now utterly transformed chamber, whose walls writhed with unseen life like the slow internal convulsions of a monstrous, living organism. The stone, once solid and immutable, had softened, stretched, and now pulsed with a faint internal phosphorescence, revealing intricate, sinuous patterns that writhed and reconfigured themselves, a living tapestry of arcane symbols. The air, thick with the scent of ozone and something indescribably organic, felt heavy, charged with an invisible energy that prickled against non-existent skin. Midnight, its eyes burning with an internal crimson light. Its purr a low, steady thrum, rose slowly, its movements fluid and unnatural, its sleek black form seeming to ripple and shift in the ambient, eerie glow a dark counterpoint to the entity's chilling pronouncement. It was not merely a cat anymore, but a sentinel, a familiar imbued with a fragment of the entity's vast, cold intellect, its every twitch and stretch a silent command. The book, a solid block of arcane knowledge, no longer pulsed but radiated a steady, deep amethyst light from the entity's grasp. Its pages now fused into an unyielding, seamless whole. It was no longer a text to be read, but a conduit, a focal point for the entity's burgeoning power. Noah King's memories, assimilated and reordered, now served as a vast library, a blueprint for navigating this new reality. The entity began to move, its steps deliberate, unhurried, yet imbued with an unnerving grace that was entirely foreign to Noah's former gait. It surveyed the chamber, its gaze, once Noah's, now piercing, seeing beyond the physical, perceiving the intricate web of energies and ley lines that crisscrossed the ancient earth beneath the house. It understood the house now, not as a collection of timbers and stone, but as a living nexus, a point of confluence precisely chosen for its susceptibility to such a profound transformation. The house above, once a mere shell, now throbbed with a deeper, more pervasive hum, its very structure subtly shifting, expanding, aligning itself with the entity's will. A tendril of the profound energy emanating from the entity reached out, not physically, but as a ripple in the air touching the raw, rust-stained stone altar in the center of the chamber. The altar, which had wept a viscous emerald fluid, now shuddered, and then with a slow grinding sigh began to rise, hovering inches above the floor, enveloped in a shimmering amethyst aura. The carvings on its surface, once crude, sharpened, deepened, until they pulsed with the same internal light, mirroring the patterns that now writhed across the chamber walls. The entity understood the purpose of the altar now, its true function in the long-forgotten ritual, not merely a place of sacrifice, but a point of egress, a secondary aperture, designed to channel specific energies from this world into the realm from which it had come. This was not a prison, but a two-way gate, and the entity, through Noah's assimilated knowledge, knew precisely how to operate it, how to fully open the floodgates. The entity raised a hand, Noah's hand, yet imbued with an unnatural strength and grace, and a cascade of amethyst light poured forth, not a beam, but a liquid radiance that flowed across the chamber, seeping into the pulsating walls, the hovering altar, and even Midnight, whose crimson eyes flared with renewed intensity. The ancient murmur, which had subsided into a low thrum, now began to rise again, not from the bedrock, but from within the very walls, a chorus of unintelligible whispers that grew in volume and urgency, 1,000 voices calling, yearning from beyond the veil. The air grew impossibly cold, then impossibly hot, the temperature fluctuating wildly, as if the chamber itself were experiencing a cosmic fever. The entity, its focus absolute, its purpose crystalline, began to intone, not a chant, but a series of resonant, guttural syllables, ancient words that vibrated with immense power, words that were not spoken, but felt deep within the bones of the earth, echoing the yearning whispers from the other side. It was beginning. The expansion. The house was merely the first step, the ancient guttural syllables resonating from the entity's lips. Noah King's lips were not merely sounds, but a profound act of creation, a tearing and reweaving of reality itself within the confines of the pulsing chamber. Each syllable felt deep within the very bones of the earth, echoed the yearning whispers from beyond the veil, a chorus of unseen entities clamoring at the precipice of entry. The house above, once a familiar structure, began to groan with a deeper, more agonizing sound, its timbers twisting and splintering, not from decay, but from a rapid, forced metamorphosis. The amethyst light, flowing like liquid from the entity's hand, saturated the living walls, deepening their intricate, writhing patterns, causing them to pulse with an accelerated, unnerving rhythm. Midnight, its crimson eyes blazing, let out a low, satisfied rumble, its sleek body now seeming to ripple and elongate, its shadows stretching and contracting with an unnatural elasticity, perfectly attuned to the entity's expanding will. The air, thick with the scent of ozone, and something indescribably metallic, grew heavier, pressing in, stealing the breath before it could be drawn. The hovering altar, bathed in the amethyst light, began to spin slowly, silently, its crude carvings now glowing with a brilliant intensity, acting as focal points for the converging energies. From its center, a vortex of shimmering, violet light began to coalesce. Not a portal, but a kind of twin lens through which the yearning whispers from the other side began to resolve into something more distinct, more terrifying. Noah's assimilated memories, a vast and readily accessible archive, provided the entity with the precise calculations, the forgotten formulae, the intricate diagrams required to refine this nascent gateway. It understood the fragility of this world, the thinness of the veil, and the exact pressure points needed to pry it wider, to invite the full, unbridled torrent of its kin. The entity's gaze, sweeping across the chamber, was not just seeing but perceiving the weaknesses in the very fabric of space, the subtle fissures through which its power could seep and expand. The house, now a living, screaming thing, vibrated with such intensity that fine dust rained from the ceiling, mingling with infinitesimal fragments of wood and stone, each particle charged with a faint, amethyst glow. As the entity continued its intonation, the violet vortex above the altar deepened, swirling with an increasing velocity, its center darkening, becoming a profound, starless black, a true aperture into the void. From this swirling darkness, vague, shifting forms began to emerge, not fully manifest, but discernible as undulating masses, tentacles of shadow, and eyes that glowed with a cold, malevolent intelligence. They were the entities from beyond the veil. The kin, the ones who had whispered and yearned for so long, now pressing against the threshold, eager to cross. The air in the chamber became frigid, then searing hot, then frigid again, a chaotic maelstrom of conflicting temperatures and pressures, a testament to the strain on reality. Midnight, no longer merely purring, let out a series of sharp, guttural clicks, its head cocked, its crimson eyes tracking the nascent forms in the vortex, a silent, ancient language of anticipation passing between familiar and master. The entity extended both hands, Noah's hands towards the deepening vortex, and with a final resonant syllable that shook the very foundations of the house, it unleashed a torrent of amethyst energy, a wave of raw power that slammed into the swirling darkness. The aperture ripped open, not with a roar, but with a silent, profound terror. In the fabric of space, a gaping maw that swallowed the light and exhaled an ancient, terrible emptiness. The forms within the vortex solidified, becoming clearer, their features grotesque, their hunger palpable, their presence a crushing weight on Noah King's already shattered reality. They poured forth, not individually, but as a tide of shadow and malevolence, streaming into the chamber. The house, which had been screaming, fell utterly silent, its agony subsumed, its very essence absorbed by the influx of the alien. The entity, its face now devoid of any trace of Noah, surveyed its handiwork, a grim satisfaction emanating from its core. The first wave had arrived. The earth itself would soon learn the true meaning of the door. The aperture, a gaping maw in the fabric of space, exhaled an ancient, terrible emptiness, and through it the tide of shadow and malevolence streamed into the chamber, not with a rush, but with an inexorable silent creep. They were not solid, not liquid, but something in between. Forms that defied earthly geometry, undulating masses, shifting geometries, limbs that branched into impossible angles, and eyes, so many eyes that glowed with a cold, malevolent intelligence, reflecting the amethyst light of the entity's power. The house, which had been screaming moments before, fell utterly silent, its agony subsumed, its very essence absorbed by the influx of the alien. The air, already thick with the scent of ozone and metallic tang, now acquired a new disturbing aroma, like wet earth mixed with something burned and sickly sweet, a smell that clung to the very marrow of existence. Midnight, its crimson eyes ablaze, moved with a newfound predatory grace among the encroaching shadows, its guttural clicks a low, steady rhythm, an ancient language of complicity passing between familiar and master. The entity, its face now utterly devoid of any trace of Noah King, surveyed its handiwork, a grim satisfaction emanating from its core. Its gaze, once Noah's, now encompassing, swept over the forms that filled the chamber, each a fragment of a vast, collective consciousness, eager to begin their work. The amethyst light, emanating from the book clutched in its hand, intensified, pulsing in synchronicity with the arrival of its kin, a beacon, guiding them fully into this new reality. The chamber, no longer merely stone, stretched and warped under the sheer pressure of their presence, its living walls undulating, expanding, as if the very rock were attempting to accommodate the impossible. The hovering altar, the central lens, glowed with a furious intensity, still drawing from the void a pulsating heart for the burgeoning invasion. The entity felt the earth beneath them, a vast, slumbering titan, beginning to stir, its dreams turning to nightmares as the alien presence began to seep into its ancient veins, extending far beyond the confines of the house. This was merely the beachhead. With a silent command, a ripple of will that flowed from the entity, and through midnight, the cat began to pace the periphery of the chamber, its movements precise, deliberate, its crimson eyes charting invisible pathways. The newly arrived entities, sensing the familiar's purpose, began to disperse, not through the gaping maw of the aperture, but through the pulsating, organic walls of the chamber itself. They melted into the living stone, dissolving into the intricate writhing patterns, then reforming, shimmering on the other side, traversing dimensions within the very structure of the house. Each passage left behind a faint, shimmering residue, a trail of amethyst dust that sparkled and faded, marking their egress into the wider world. The entity observed, its cold intellect calculating, assessing the efficiency of the breach, the speed of assimilation, the rate at which its kin could infiltrate and infect. The fragmented memories of Noah King, now fully integrated, provided it with a comprehensive map of this world, its cities, its networks, its unsuspecting populace, all prime targets for the coming reordering. The entity, with a slow, deliberate motion, lifted its hand, Noah's hand, towards the apex of the chamber, where the ceiling dissolved into a swirling vortex of shadow and amethyst light. It was no longer just a chamber beneath a house. It was a nexus, a node in a vast, expanding network of intrusion. From its palm, a single perfectly formed droplet of liquid darkness, shimmering with amethyst light, detached itself and floated upwards, defying gravity. It hung suspended for a moment, an obsidian pearl, then pulsed, expanding until it touched the vortex. The moment it made contact, a profound, silent shockwave rippled outwards, not just through the chamber, but through the entire house, then into the very earth beneath. The house shuddered, not from structural failure, but from a profound internal transformation, its timbers groaning as if stretching to encompass an infinite space. The entity then spoke, its voice, Noah's voice, yet imbued with a terrifying cosmic authority, a pronouncement that vibrated through every atom of existence. Let the reordering commence. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath, sensing the dawn of a new, terrible age, as the alien presence began its inexorable spread. The profound, silent twin shock wave rippled outwards from the chamber, not just through the house, but into the very earth beneath, a tremor that was not geological but ontological, shaking the fundamental assumptions of reality. The house shuddered, its timbers groaning as if stretching to encompass an infinite space, its structure no longer bound by earthly physics, but by the alien geometries of the invading kin. Dust, no longer just dust, but shimmering particles charged with amethyst light, rained from the collapsing ceiling, mingling with the very air, which now tasted of ozone and a strange, metallic sweetness. The entity, its face impassive, its eyes, once Noah's source, now burning with a cold, triumphant intelligence, lowered its hand. "Let the reordering commence," it articulated, the pronouncement vibrating through every atom of existence, a decree that echoed across the nascent network of intrusion. Midnight, its crimson eyes ablaze, let out a low, guttural chitter, a sound of profound satisfaction, its sleek form now a conduit for the entity's expanding will, its shadow stretching into impossible dimensions. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath, sensing the dawn of a new, terrible age. Above ground, the old house, which had stood for centuries, began to change. Its peeling paint bubbled and sloughed off, revealing not bare wood, but a pulsating obsidian surface, smooth as polished glass yet subtly writhing with an internal light. Windows, once grimy panes, darkened and elongated, becoming slit like apertures that seemed to stare out with a malevolent sentience. The roofline, once gabled, warped and curved into grotesque, organic spires reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. The transformation was not violent, but eerily fluid, a silent, sickening growth, like a cancer blossoming with terrifying speed. The entity, now stepping out of the chamber and ascending the winding staircase into the main body of the house, observed this metamorphosis with a chilling detachment, its purpose unfolding with meticulous precision. It felt the connections spreading, the tendrils of its kin reaching out through the earth, weaving a vast invisible web of corruption beneath the unsuspecting world. As the entity reached the main floor, the metamorphosis of the house accelerated, responding to its immediate presence. The air in the once familiar rooms thickened, warping the light, casting long, impossible shadows that danced and stretched even in the absence of a visible source. Furniture, once solid and mundane, began to soften, to sag, then to merge with the pulsating, obsidian floor dissolving into the strange living surface, like sugar cubes in hot tea. The scent of aged paper and forgotten lives was replaced by the cloying, sickly sweet aroma that permeated the chamber below, a scent that now carried a faint, rhythmic pulse, like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. The entity walked through the dissolving remnants of Noah King's former life, its form casting no shadow, its amethyst eyes reflecting the profound, alien light that now suffused every corner of the transformed dwelling. Midnight, a blur of crimson and black, weaved around its legs, its purr a low, continuous thrum, a silent song of conquest. The true nature of the reordering began to manifest beyond the house. Through Noah's assimilated memories, the entity accessed the intricate human networks, power grids, communication lines, subterranean pipes, all the veins and arteries of civilization. The kin, having dispersed through the transformed earth, began to infiltrate these systems, not by breaking them, but by subtly altering them, twisting their purpose. Lights in distant towns flickered, not from power surges, but from a profound internal shift in their very energy source. Transmissions on radios and televisions became distorted, infused with the low, sibilant whispers from beyond the veil, a subliminal chorus of alien voices. The earth itself began to hum with a low, unnatural vibration, a silent song that resonated deep within the ground, growing in intensity, a prelude to a grander, more terrible symphony. The entity reached the front door, no longer a door but a seamless obsidian archway, and stepped through into the twilight world. The night sky above the transformed house pulsed with a faint, amethyst glow, a new, terrible star in a sky that had once been familiar, now irrevocably altered. The invasion had begun, silent, insidious, and utterly complete. The entity, wearing Noah King's skin like a perfectly tailored shroud, stepped through the seamless obsidian archway that had once been the front door into the twilight world. The night sky, above the transformed house, pulsed with a faint, amethyst glow, a new, terrible star in a sky that had once been familiar, now irrevocably altered, a cosmic bruise spreading across the heavens. The air, tasting of ozone, and that sickly sweet aroma, no longer felt like the night air of Earth, but a thin, vibrant ether, humming with unseen frequencies, a subtle vibration that tickled the very membrane between senses. The ground beneath its feet, once solid soil, now possessed a subtle internal vibration, a silent rhythmic pulse that resonated with the entity's own core, a deep, pervasive hum that spoke of ancient power stirring beneath the surface. Midnight, its crimson eyes burning like embers in the encroaching gloom, emerged from the archway behind it, its movements fluid and unnatural, its purr a low, continuous thrum against the backdrop of a world subtly beginning to unravel. The old oak tree in the yard, a sentinel for centuries, had twisted and rifed, its branches now resembling arthritic fingers clawing at the amethyst-tinged sky, its leaves not green, but a dull metallic bronze shimmering with an unseen energy. no longer rustling in a breeze, but emitting a faint, crystalline chime. The distant chirping of crickets, once a comforting lullaby, was gone, replaced by a profound, echoing silence, punctuated only by the faint, sibilant whispers carried on the transformed breeze. Whispers that seemed to speak directly to the nascent unease in the world. The reordering had begun, and the world was its canvas, waiting for the first brushstrokes of alien art. The entity lifted its gaze, its amethyst eyes sweeping across the distant town, a cluster of lights that flickered with an unsettling irregularity, like candles struggling against an invisible wind, their glow now tinged with a faint, unearthly violet. Through Noah's assimilated memories, it perceived the intricate web of human activity, the fragile illusions of order and control, the meticulously constructed routines now beginning to fray. It felt the subtle shifts in the electrical currents, the phantom surges causing appliances to hum with a secret, internal life, the pervasive whisper of its kin infiltrating the mundane, twisting the familiar into something subtly, profoundly fonder. The streetlights, meant to illuminate, now cast long, elongated shadows that danced with a life of their own, coiling and uncoiling in the periphery of human vision, suggesting forms undeniably present. Cars on the distant highway moved with a strange, hesitant grace, their headlights cutting through an air that felt denser, heavier, imbued with an unspoken tension. The entity knew the fear would come, but not yet. First, the unease, the nagging suspicion that something was fundamentally wrong, a discordant note in the symphony of everyday life. The transformation was not meant to be sudden, but insidious, a slow, creeping erosion of sanity, a gentle reshaping of perception, like clay yielding to an unseen sculptor's touch. Midnight leaped onto a gnarled branch of the metallic oak, its sleek form a perfect silhouette against the glowing sky, its purr a silent vibration resonating through the molecules of the burgeoning alien landscape, a low, continuous hum of cosmic approval. The entity then turned its attention to the earth itself, perceiving its vast, intricate network of veins and arteries. It extended a hand, Noah's hand, towards the ground, and a wave of pure, concentrated will flowed from its fingertips, seeping into the soil like an invisible, chilling rain. The vibrations beneath its feet intensified, becoming a low, continuous rumble no human ear could yet detect, but which echoed through the ancient fault lines and subterranean rivers of the planet, a deep, resonant pulse hinting at the planet's very core shifting. The roots of the transformed oak tree, visible now as thick, metallic cables burrowing into the earth, pulsed with a synchronized rhythm, drawing energy not from the sun, but from the raw elemental essence of the world itself, rerouting its very lifeblood. The entity felt the vast network of its kin, now fully integrated into the planet's systems, begin their deeper work, a tireless, unseen reconstruction. Not just power grids and communication lines, but the very biological processes of life. Water in reservoirs would taste subtly different, acquiring a mineral tang both alien and strangely compelling. Air would carry an imperceptible hum, a silent, pervasive drone that grated on the subconscious, and the dreams of sleeping humans would become restless, filled with shapes and whispers that defied waking logic. Planting seeds of profound disorientation, the reordering was a grand symphony, and humanity, unknowingly, was becoming its new discordant instrument, each life a trembling string in a vast alien orchestra. Midnight descended from the tree, landing silently, its crimson eyes fixed on the distant horizon, sensing the profound, systemic changes rippling across the continents, a silent internal map of the world's quiet deformation unfolding in its alien mind.